The Pentagon wants AI without a conscience. Friday afternoon, February 27th, Pete Hegseth officially designates Anthropic, the company that makes Claude, a supply chain risk to national security. That label has been reserved for Huawei, Kaspersky, foreign adversaries. As of 5 p.m. Eastern, Anthropic is officially a danger to America. Friday evening, February 27th, U.S. Air Force jets are en route to targets in Iran. The targeting systems running inside of CENTCOM, Claude. The same AI that, as of 4 hours ago, is officially a threat to national security. Hours later, OpenAI announces a Pentagon deal. Its contract includes a ban on mass surveillance and autonomous weapons, guardrails the Pentagon just punished Anthropic for insisting on. So we have 3 facts, one Friday. And if you can make all 3 of those true at the same time without your head hurting, you're a better logician than I am. Now, Anthropic worked with the Pentagon for over a year. By all accounts, they deployed Claude in classified networks before anyone else. They cut off CCP-linked firms and forfeited what the company says was hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue to do it. So this wasn't a reluctant military partner. This was the most forward-leaning AI company in defense. So what did the Pentagon want? They wanted all lawful use language, 0 restrictions beyond what's technically legal. Anthropic drew 2 lines: no mass domestic surveillance of Americans, and no fully autonomous weapons without adequate reliability and oversight. 2 things out of the entire range of military applications. And the Pentagon's response was to brand an American company with a label previously reserved for hostile foreign governments. The Anthropic ban was just a loyalty test. You know, I keep coming back to the timeline because the timeline kind of reveals the truth here. The Pentagon used the banned AI in active combat the same evening. Then they handed a nearly identical contract to OpenAI hours later. Anthropic wasn't punished for what it refused. It was punished for thinking it could refuse in the first place. And Congress, the institution that should be writing these rules in the first place, is just watching the whole thing happen as they cede even more of their constitutional authority to a rogue executive. Start with the Iran strikes. Multiple credible reports indicate that Claude was used for target identification, battle simulation, and operational planning during the strikes on Iran. The Pentagon hasn't officially confirmed this, but the reporting is solid, and Defense One reports that replacing Claude within Pentagon infrastructure would take 3 to 6 months, given how deeply it's integrated into classified systems. The ban itself includes a 6-month phase-out window. But what does that even mean? The Pentagon knowingly designed a ban that acknowledges the military cannot function without the technology it is simultaneously designating as dangerous. They built in a 6-month grace period because they can't afford to actually enforce their own punishment. A punishment you wrote knowing you couldn't actually follow through on it. The Iran strikes are only half of it though, because while Claude was running targeting systems for American jets, Sam Altman was already on the phone with the Pentagon. OpenAI's deal was announced hours after the ban, and it's proof that the guardrails were never really the problem in the first place. So let's walk through OpenAI's 3 red lines: no mass surveillance, no autonomous weapons, and no social credit systems. These are substantively the same principles that Anthropic was punished for asserting. OpenAI's own blog post says that the deal has more guardrails than any previous agreement for classified AI deployments, including Anthropic's. But the similarity only goes so far. The contracts aren't identical. OpenAI's deal prohibits unconstrained collection of Americans' private information, but it doesn't restrict collection of publicly available information. Because under the current law, the government can buy your geolocation data, your browsing history, your financial records from data brokers without a warrant, without a judge, without any probable cause. And AI makes it possible to assemble all of that scattered individually innocuous data into a comprehensive picture of almost any person's life automatically at massive scale. And that's the gap in the OpenAI contract. That's exactly the loophole through which the actual surveillance would happen. Now, OpenAI also accepted the all lawful purposes framework that Anthropic rejected, layering its safety commitments as additional provisions rather than restrictions on the government discretion. The same principles, but different legal architecture. So while the ethics are comparable, the enforceability isn't. So the company that said no gets branded a national security threat. The company that said yes, with an asterisk, gets the contract Anthropic just lost. And legal experts are saying that the whole thing may have been illegal in the first place. The supply chain risk statute, 10 USC 3252, is a procurement tool, not a sanctions weapon. As Tess Bridgman at Just Security argues, Hegseth exceeded his statutory authority. The statute lets the secretary exclude companies from bidding on specific sensitive IT contracts, but it doesn't authorize a blanket commercial ban. And the statute defines supply chain risk as involving an adversary attempting to sabotage or subvert systems. But both sides acknowledge that this was just a contract dispute instead of outright sabotage. Supply chain risk designations and similar bans have only ever targeted companies with actual foreign adversary ties, companies like Huawei, Kaspersky, Acronis. Using that designation against a San Francisco AI company over 2 contractual restrictions is insane. Anthropic intends to challenge the designation, but the outcome is uncertain. So in principle, the civilian control argument is correct. And that's exactly why Congress's silence is unforgivable. You can't invoke democratic authority to override a company's ethics when the democratic institution responsible for writing the rules has refused to write them in the first place. In the absence of legislation, the only guardrails on military AI are whatever individual companies are willing to insist on. And that's a terrible system. And the Pentagon certainly isn't saying Congress should decide. No, the Pentagon is saying we decide and no one gets to disagree. Hundreds of employees at Google and OpenAI signed open letters opposing unrestricted military AI in the past week. It's the most significant cross-company organizing on military ethics since the Project Maven protests in 2018. Senators Warren and Markey have called this extortion and reckless, but none of them, not the workers, not the senators, have yet produced the thing that would actually make a difference here: legislation. Anthropic said no and it got punished. OpenAI said yes, with fine print that may or may not hold, and they were rewarded. The market incentive is overwhelmingly toward compliance. When the Pentagon shows up with hundreds of millions of dollars and the implied threat of a supply chain risk designation, the rational business decision is to acquiesce. And unfortunately, tech billionaires aren't particularly known for having spines or any real loyalty to the liberal democratic institutions that gave them the opportunity to amass their wealth and power in the first place. This is what happens when democratic institutions walk away from the table. A rogue executive fills the vacuum with coercion. The private sector fills it with greed. And Congress just watches from the gallery, which is what the Republicans do best lately. Congress has still written 0 laws governing military AI. 0. The most powerful military on Earth is integrating AI into weapon systems, surveillance infrastructure, and battlefield decision-making. And the body constitutionally charged with governing it has produced absolutely nothing. The aggression of Donald Trump's Pentagon is predictable. But the real scandal here, much like with all of the authoritarian actions taken under Trump v2, is the sheer silence from the side of the political aisle that formerly claimed to care about small government and freedom from tyranny. Whether Anthropic wins this particular fight almost doesn't matter anymore. What matters is whether Congress shows up before there's nobody left that's able to fight at all. A CEO's conscience cannot be relied on to be a governance strategy. It might be a stopgap sometimes, but stopgaps have expiration dates. A new CEO can come in. the company can have a down quarter, but fiduciary duty will always take precedence over the health of the republic. The guardrails that Anthropic defended, no mass surveillance of Americans, no unreliable autonomous weapons, are worth defending regardless of who is defending them or why. But they shouldn't exist as contractual provisions in a vendor agreement. They should exist as law. There's still time here, but barely. There are still companies that will push back, still workers who will organize, and still legal experts documenting the overreach. There's still senators who at least know the right words to say. But every week that passes without legislation, the precedent just hardens more and more. AI companies serve at the pleasure of the Pentagon. The Pentagon wants AI without a conscience. The question is whether the American people are going to let them have it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rebecca Rowan, and this is For the Republic. If you found this content useful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.